Have you ever wondered why suffering and evil seem so instinctively wrong to us? The image on the screen is a cover of Time magazine from about 10 years ago, and it's a photo of a young woman called Bibi Asia. Who was she? Well, Bibi was a teenager, 14 years old, when the story I'm about to tell you happened, living in Afghanistan. And her family married her off to a Taliban fighter in his 50s, much older than her. And he was a horrible, cruel man, and for weeks and months abused her viciously. And so, understandably, Bibi ran away. Or she was captured by her family, and they proceeded to punish her by cutting off her nose and cutting off her ears and leaving her to bleed to death in the mountains. Well, thankfully, Bibi was rescued by United Nations aid workers, taken to the USA, where she had reconstructive surgery, and is now a beautiful young woman and pursuing, I think the last time I checked, a teaching career. Well, I was talking of teaching, I was teaching a class, a high school class on ethics a few months ago for a group of 15 and 16-year-olds at a school in the UK. And to get the conversation going, I put the picture of Bibi Asia from Time magazine, I put that picture up on the PowerPoint slide at the front of the class. And I asked the class, do you think what happened to her was wrong? And I'm sure you'll be relieved to know that British schools are not stuffed full of psychopaths, because every kid more or less went, absolutely wrong, shouldn't have happened. Well, then I asked the follow-up question, because good teaching is asking questions, right? I said, well, why is it wrong? Give me a reason. And it was interesting, because try as they might, nobody could give me a reason. People would say things like, well, it's wrong to do that to a human being. And I went, okay, why is it wrong to do that to a human being? And finally, we kind of ended on, well, it's wrong because it's wrong because it's wrong. What I find fascinating is whether it's teenagers in a classroom or anybody watching this, whether you're an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim or any faith, whatever, we all instinctively know, I hope, that what was done was wrong. Or when we turn on the TV or read the news and we see some horrific human rights abuse, we know instinctively that it's wrong. But why do we have that instinct? You see, if we are nothing more than atoms and particles, if we are nothing more than the result of time plus chance plus natural selection, then in that kind of world, some people are going to get hurt. Some people will have strength and power and the ability to use it to oppress others. Hey, that's just the way the world is. But none of us respond instinctively that way. In fact, I remember a few years ago debating at the time, the world's leading atheist ethicist. His name is Peter Singer, from Princeton University, and Peter's actually written widely over the years arguing that human rights don't exist. He thinks there are no such thing as human rights as an atheist, and he thinks actually to talk of human rights is speciesist. But in our debate, in our dialogue, I talked about examples like Bibi and others, and he eventually landed on the conclusion. He said, I do find myself increasingly, as we look at these stories, having to maybe admit there are some things that are absolutely wrong, no matter even if the majority of people think they're okay. And I found it fascinating that even an atheist like Peter was forced to that conclusion. Well, that raises the question, where does that desire to label things good and evil come from? Is it just a misfiring in our brain? Some gene hasn't evolved properly and we feel the need to reach for these categories? Or could it be that actually we know instinctively that we do live in a moral universe, that there is a God behind this universe who has created it, a God who is goodness itself. And on that story, that which aligns with him and his character, that which respects and honors the human beings he has made in his image, as the Bible says, well, that is good, and anything that goes against that is evil. So next time you find yourself reading a story in the news and thinking, that shouldn't be allowed, don't just stop there, wonder to yourself, where does that conclusion and that instinct point? Does it point to atheism, or does it point to the Christian story?